Welcome back, folks. My guest today is the founder of one of the top health coach training programs out there, the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition Program. Reed Davis is the founder of this incredible program, and he talks to us about how, as a clinical nutritionist way back when, he noticed what helped some people get better and what stopped others from getting better altogether. And this learning, after dealing with thousands of patients, this is what led him to create the FDN program as we know it today. I often get people coming to me asking me what do I look for in a health coach, or who they themselves are wanting to become health coaches. If you fall into any of those categories, or if you're just on a health journey of your own and want to understand more about the approach of FDN, then you want to listen to this episode. Reed is a great speaker and he is a wealth of information. So if you want to learn more about the FDN program or find a practitioner, you can go to functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com. If you decide you want to become a health coach with them, an FDN practitioner, then you can use discount code NAT500 and save yourself a few dollars. And of course, if you have any comments or questions, you know where to find me. You can always reach me through natniddam.com, my website. And if you have any comments, questions, that's where you would send them. And finally, if you enjoy this episode, or you know someone who just needs this information themselves, please make sure to share it out with them. And if you're feeling inspired, leave us a review. We love those 5-star reviews. That's what allows us to rise up the rankings. So we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor, and then you get to deep dive into the world of the FDN. Enjoy. Hey, folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Welcome to the show, Reed. It is such a pleasure to have you here today.
You too, Natalie. Real pleasure.
Yeah. So Reed Davis and I have been crossing paths for, I don't know, years now. At different.
Yeah, long time.
Long time.
Good to see a familiar face.
Exactly. And, when I got the note from your team, I was like, Reed Davis, oh my God, that's so cool. I'm so excited. We've always crossed paths. We've had little short conversations, but we've never had like the big talk. So okay. This will be a good big talk. So Reed, I always love to start my podcast by helping my listeners know a little bit more about the person on the other side of the mic. So, you have a very varied background. So maybe you'd like to tell us how Reed Davis ended up being the guy behind this giant machine pushing out these really cool coaches out there.
Yeah, thanks. Well, you know the story, but I'd be happy to go back only so far. Yeah. I could go back to when I was in environmental law, saving the planet, conservationist, air, birds, water, trees, bees. Really, I was on a mission to clean up the world and noticed how bad it was, killing all the fish and things. It was that kind of a business, recycling everything. And I started to turn my attention to what's going on with people, like what's it doing to us, including me. I didn't want anything sneaking up on me. I was in great health, good shape and everything, but I switched gears and said, I went to work at a wellness center in Southern California, which is very exciting. People coming in there were, I identified or kind of coined it, caught in a cycle of trial and error. Mm-hmm. I noticed people coming in had been to 5 or 8 or 10 different practitioners already. And, one day I'm out riding my motorcycle in Southern California, which I do a lot. And the wind's blowing through where my hair is supposed to be. I'm thinking, I love being free and able to do what I want. These poor people coming in the office were, in my opinion, again, having never really been to a doctor except for sports injuries. I thought, what a ripoff. I just thought people were getting ripped off by whatever. Well, I don't care if they're going to, medical or alternative or what they were going to. They weren't getting their problems fixed. Mm-hmm. And it really upset me to the point where I said, I'm going to be the last person they need to see, whatever it takes. No, I didn't know what I was doing. It was very naive to say that, but I spent the next 10 years in that clinic running thousands of labs for thousands of people because I could, trying to get to the underlying causes, conditions, and what's really wrong with them. Because they'd had enough of the diagnosis and treatment model. Oh, it sounds like this, run one test. Yep, it's your thyroid. Here's your thyroid medication. Or, and I'll just stop here. They were being told by their practitioners, nothing's wrong with you. Your
Yeah.
blood work looks normal.
Yeah.
And that just freaked me out. So I put in the time, 10 years, thousands of labs, thousands of people. And that's what got me to the point where I recognized some patterns and figured some things out.
Just a few. So at that point, then you started that practice yourself.
Oh, the practice, the wellness center was there. There was chiropractic and acupuncture. There was a DO, there was massage. There was, I became the nutritionist kind of by accident. The owner asked, she was getting her diplomate in nutrition for her chiropractic license and said I could go along. And if I would do her homework and mine, then I would get a certificate out of it. So I took that challenge on. I said, yeah, I'll do that. And I really enjoyed it. I got to work on her patients in between my classes, which was extraordinary opportunity. Hardly anyone gets that. So, but I wasn't a physician. I couldn't take the diagnosis and treatment mentality and realized later the patients coming in there didn't want that. And it doesn't work. That wasn't helping people, not to the level that I knew that I could with just, they call it underlying cause, root cause. I have an opinion about that, but it's really all the upstream dysfunctions and imbalances. And there's a whole constellation of those that I learned to identify.
Yeah. So I think that's a good place to kind of go in because, people are constantly being told you need to know the root cause. You need to know what's driving this. And to a degree, I think that is true. It's a question of where you look and how you look. And, talking about this constellation that is really the foundation of your program and the way that you train practitioners to help their patients. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. So, there's a nuance between root cause and what you talk about as metabolic chaos, right? So this whole dissolution of how the body is supposed to be able to get itself back to homeostasis, you get so many things out of whack that it can no longer find its balance anymore.
And that's why I call it metabolic chaos. And I think I did kind of coin that phrase for folks so they'd understand this could be very complex, but the term root cause, I used to use it. And then I realized that it's really elusive. You may never find it. It could be really distant from where the symptoms are occurring. Some things occurring around the symptoms like low thyroid symptoms, thyroid. Yeah, the thyroid's not producing, but there's still so many other things going on. You could call it upstream. And those things like the hormone imbalances and the immune system and digestion and detoxification and energy production and the nervous system balance and all of these things are going on simultaneously. They've all been diminished or they're dysfunctional or out of balance in some way. And those things are having an effect upon each other. And some of it's just not measurable. So, I'm not saying give up on the root cause because it's a noble quest. But what you really want to do is to be able to have an effect upon it, regardless of how closely you've identified. So we would say, root cause may not be discoverable, and it may be the result of interactions between so many elements that you can't singly measure it for sure, but you can know about it by inference and what we call clinical correlation. And then you can have an effect on it. The things we ask people to do aren't take drugs and get surgery. So we ask them to change their lives so they can have an effect upon every cell, tissue, organ, system. And that outperforms any other system I know of.
Yeah. So
unless you're dying, you need a pill, take the pill.
Yeah.
But when you get out of the woods, now what are you going to do? What got you there?
Yeah. So where do you start? I mean, where do you find that is there a common place to begin, or it really, I mean, probably it's a hybrid of both, or it depends.
Yeah.
I probably use that phrase
depends,
more than
but
any other phrase.
well, we have a system, so it's really easy. It's step by step, and everyone kind of goes through the same initial step system. But it begins with a conversation. But what's your main complaint, and how long has that been going on, and how often does it bother you, and what have you tried so far, and how is this ruining your life? Because if people aren't motivated and just want to take a pill, that's not us. We're there for people who have long-term chronic downward spiraling conditions, and they need to get off that hamster wheel, the cycle of trial and error. They're just going from one therapy or pills or diet or exercise program or something to the next with not even a lot of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And so the key is to stop. Here's the steps we would have you take. And it does require running labs. So that's the first step, other than, again, that conversation about where are you at? And there's also an investment. So it's for different reasons, I guess not for everybody. I think the knowledge is for everyone. But until they're teaching it in school, in fourth grade, which is, you don't need much more than a ninth grade education, in my opinion, to understand how the body works and to nurture it in every way. I mean, it's much more complex than that, but if you want to know. But anyway, the things you do: diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation, that spells dress. And that's our answer for every malady. Again, we're not there. If you just got shot in a drive-by, don't call your nutritionist.
Yeah.
Stop the bleeding somewhere. If you get off a plane from West Africa and your temperature is 105 and you're bleeding from your eyeballs, you don't call your nutritionist. So, obviously medical care has a tremendous, wonderful place in the world, but it does what it does. And then people have to take responsibility, but not just responsibility. I can go back to the very beginning when I'm out there riding my motorcycle. It's about freedom and control of your own health.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I wanted originally, was the freedom, control of my own health, not being dependent upon, drugs and surgery. If something was to go south, I wanted to know, how can I fix it?
Right. So when you say somebody doesn't need more than a ninth grade education, you're talking about in order to be educated about how to care for our own bodies.
Well, I mean, that's pretty idealistic, I mean, it gets the biology, the anatomy, the physiology is a higher level than that. But the habits you need to form,
mm-hmm.
And paying attention to your body so that you know whether that was a great meal or not, satiation and energy and sense of well-being, these things are observable. I didn't mean you're in ninth grade, like that you're a teenager, because they're nuts. But, I meant,
no, I know what you meant. And I agree with you. I think that, we could we could put a little bit more weight behind helping children to understand how their bodies work, what feels, how to, we live in a society where we ultimately become completely disconnected from our bodies and what's going on. It's like we cut it off at the neck, and it's whatever's going on below the neck is whatever. And it's what making this happy is all that we really care about. Right. And, by not really in a proactive way, educating children in a way that empowers them about how they feel and how to take care of this incredible machine they've been gifted with, we're doing them and ourselves a huge, disservice. And on the other side, practitioners, whether they're FDNs or people like me or whoever else, like we're often sitting across a person who's completely lost track of what it is to feel good, right? They don't realize how crummy they're feeling until you help them to feel better.
Well, kids often don't know that it's not normal because they just sort of grew up with it. And parents who felt great at one time, but have been feeling so bad for so long, they've gotten accustomed to it. So they think it's now sort of the new normal. But I remember one of the first kids I worked with, Natalie, she was a woman coming in the office. She was doing pretty good. And she asked me, did I work with kids?
Mm-hmm.
And I raised 4, and I had a football team for 15 years, or coached football that long. So I knew a lot about kids. And I said, yeah, sure. So she said that her kid, what's the story? Her kid was being kicked out of school, or about to be either kicked out of school or put on drugs. And they said, you got to get this kid on drugs. And, like Ritalin was the drug of choice back then for ADD. And because he was poking the other kids, not paying attention, being outbursts and things like that. And I asked the mom, I said, well, do you think your son has a Ritalin deficiency? And she didn't really laugh. I get a little smile out of you. That's good. But she was like, no, like she's more frustrated. Anyway, I said, well, and how old is he? He was only 9 years old.
Yeah.
That's
So
to me was sickening. And so I said, yeah, well, let's do a couple tests. We found out he was really sensitive to some things that he was eating in his environment, got him off those things. And within 3 weeks, the principal of the school tracked me down, called the mom, what happened to this boy? And because he's a completely different kid. And he called me, he said, what did you put Billy on?
Food.
Some like good food and stuff. So kids respond very quickly. And yes, if they could, that one and many others that I subsequently worked with, that was the first one, miracle. And then I started really loving working with kids. But yeah, that you can teach them that what you eat matters. And it will change how you feel. And in this case, change his life completely around. Same thing happened to some of my football players with their asthma that disappeared, and other similar situations, people with their migraines disappeared. So I learned that really early on, that testing and giving people things to do and having them make their own observations put them in that control that we wanted them to have.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love how, and sometimes it is interesting to me that sometimes even before you test, if you're able to get someone, I think what's great about the test is it gives people something to look at, right? And you can say, this test says this, and all of a sudden there's like this higher authority that has come down and said, you should, your body is not responding to X, Y, or Z, or is responding in a bad way. But I do find it amazing sometimes that if people are willing to, and you find yourself negotiating with people saying, okay, look, for 30 days, I just need you to cut this out of your diet for the next 30 days. It'll still be there in 30 days. So if you get no change, if you still feel the same in 30 days, you can go buy a whole box of donuts and chow down on them. But if you could just give them up for 30 days, and sometimes it's a week, like we have to manage the time so that it's something they can get their heads around. And I would say that 90% of the time, it doesn't mean it's going to solve all their problems, but they materially experience a shift that all of a sudden turns on that light, and they're like, oh, wait, really? Because people just don't know. And particularly with kids, I mean, that's such a great point, because it's so often the last thing, people never get to that point where they're going to address a child's diet, because they don't really believe that could be that simple.
It's almost miraculous. The issue though with the testing and stuff is that looking forwards, you don't know who it's going to help the most.
Sure. So
it's just an investment you have to make. Looking backwards, miracles. I'm not kidding. I had a lady who was she was in a dark room with a pillow over her head 5 days a week with migraines. Couldn't work, had no money, stuff like that. I said, I'll work for free, but this one test you're going to do, and you're going to pay the lab fee. She had to have some skin in the game, and it just turned her life around. She found out these things that she was eating when she could come up from underneath the pillow, were the cause of why she was back underneath the pillow in the dark room. And just miraculous turnaround, no more migraines. Within 3 weeks, she had what she said, normal headaches.
Wow.
Now,
Which is
I
crazy,
know
right? Yeah.
there's no such thing as a normal headache. Those
No.
some people start there, but you get the point that it really was miraculous looking backwards at her and the asthma cases and the skin conditions. Oh my goodness, like hives, really bad hives, and gone because we figured out what was causing them. So was that the root cause? In those cases, you kind of dialed it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, just amazing. So, but looking forward, not sure who is going to help the most. Keep in mind that foods contribute to metabolic chaos, but only to a certain degree. And some people, man, that's the major contributor. And when you remove those foods, like you just said, for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you get miraculous contributing, but not that much. It's a combination. Remember all the constellation of things, the neurotoxins from even from personal care products.
Yeah.
Bad reaction to household cleaning products, where you work, what's in the air and in the environment. And even with kids, they're putting on pajamas that are soaked in fire retardant.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. So when you talk about that testing earlier, are you talking about food sensitivity testing?
Yes.
Yeah. And are there particular ones that you like more than others?
Yes,
because they're not all equal, right?
And that's another thing about the you run the test and you get off the foods that it says are bad for you, and it doesn't do a lot of good. So some of that's based around the lab. We use what's called a mediator release test, which 22 years ago, when I first ran one, was considered experimental and not paid for by insurance.
Yeah.
And I told a doctor, he was an allergist, about this test. I was at a dinner party, whatever it was, and he's an allergist. Oh, we don't run that test. We only run IgE testing because that's what a true allergy is. I said, well, I've had these people do the test and got off the food, and it changed. Their hives went away, their migraines went away. Kids started behaving themselves and doing good in school. Well, that test, we just don't run that test. We don't run because it's not approved by insurance. And so this stuff's out of pocket. But that mediator release test, I use Oxford Biomedical. They don't deal with the public. You have to go through a practitioner. And I was one of their certified practitioners 20 years ago. Now we just kind of work it in, but it covers 170 foods.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no one eats 170 different foods.
You and I. I think we'd be in better shape if we did, honestly.
No, we might eat 30 foods. Maybe, I don't know what the number is, but you screen. So we don't even call it a test. We just call it an oral intolerance screening. Mm-hmm. And there's different types of sensitivities. It could be that your body reacts through the immune system. There are other mediators of inflammation besides the immune system, and there are you can't digest it. Your body's not making the enzyme. So that's a real, like lactose intolerance. It's not an allergy. It's your body can't break down. It doesn't have the lactase to break down the lactose. Yeah, and that's why you can't digest it, and it gives you diarrhea or something. So there's lots of different types of reasons why you want to avoid foods. And lastly, if you want to stay here, it's good with me, but on the foods, we get this list, and yes, there's all the foods they tested you for, and these ones are red or yellow. You get off of those. But more importantly, why not look at the green list? There's your shopping list. Right. It's a list of what's good. Like, oh, I can't have carrots, whatever. Oh, do you really crave carrots? Let's look at what's listed as green, non-reactive, and make up breakfast, lunch, and dinner with that. And there's always lots of really good choices. Yeah, no, for sure. The cup is half full, Yeah, well, that's the whole psychology of coaching, right? People tend to, all of a sudden, they zero in on the things they can't have, which often are the things they've been eating too much of, and is what's gotten them in trouble in the first place. And it's, for the practitioner or the coach or whoever, it's all about redirecting the attention to the green list. Let's not talk about what we can't have. Let's talk about look at all these beautiful things you can eat. And then
and then so that's the Oxford Biomedical, so that's the mediator release. So it's looking at, is it looking also IgG, IgA, and then other mediators on top of that, or it's not even looking at those?
No, it's a volumetric change. It's with every test, I don't care what the test is, it's a matter of how sensitive is it, sensitivity, and then specificity. Those are the two requirements for a test to be any good. And so it's really sensitive. It can measure really, really minute changes in the blood. So each little tiny drop of blood, because they take 4 big vials of blood from your arm, it does require the ability to do that. So we can't do it on 2-year-olds. We can't get enough blood to do the test. But so you expose it to the antigen, the food, and it's very not only sensitive as in tiny reactions, but it's very specific. Like, yes, can tell the difference between carrots and onions and all the other things it tests for. So it's very sensitive and very specific. And again, looking forwards, you don't know, hey, Mrs. Smith, you've got the hives and you're tired and you're fatigued and you're overweight and your hair's falling out and you're cranky and foggy thinking. And, other than that, you're doing great. But, but we don't know how much it's going to help you, but we test every single person, because by removing the bad ones, focusing on the good ones, we have seen, looking backwards, seen amazing results. So it's just one of our 5 labs that we run on everybody.
Right. Do you want to talk about the other labs? I mean, I think you do hormone testing as well, and everybody. You're not using, I mean, there's one in particular that everybody's always running around talking about. What do you look for in hormone testing? Are you doing blood? Are you doing urine? Or are you doing, what's the other one? Blood.
Well, we train on all of them, because you want to have a variety, because you don't know what you're going to have available to you. Right. Some of the tests just aren't available everywhere. We have people in 50 different countries. So you use what you can get your hands on. Yeah. But it's how you look at it that matters. Hormones need to be balanced. First of all, your cortisol and DHEA, they have to be balanced, because one is the catabolic hormone, cortisol, that's your generally your stress hormone, affects your blood sugar levels dramatically. It's an anti-inflammatory and painkiller. So cortisol is your stress hormone, but it's very catabolic. So it will break you down. Yeah. Now the counter-regulatory hormone is DHEA, and we call it that because the real name is dehydroepiandrosterone. Yeah. But
DHEA is such a nicer name.
So now those need to be in balance. Why? Because you want to balance between catabolic and anabolic, which builds you up. You need to break down, you need to build up. And so you want those in balance. That's really a good measurement. Total cortisol could also be important, as you might consider that how much is left in the tank, so to speak. We don't use the term adrenal fatigue anymore. It's considered HPA axis dysfunction and contributors to cortisol dysregulation. But so there's fancy names for what we used to call adrenal fatigue, but it was a great construct, adrenal fatigue, even though it's not quite real. It's like your tank is, you've been under stress for so long, your body's in that catabolic state, it's breaking down, and you need to figure out what all the stressors are and eliminate them, handle them better, build your body back up, get back into an anabolic state. So the total cortisol for what sort of phase of dysfunction you might be in, HPA axis, the cortisol to DHA ratio is very important for the catabolic anabolic balance. You also might look at the individual cortisols during the day, morning, noon, because you can see these roller coasters. Normal circadian rhythm starts high in the morning, gets you going, gets the blood flowing, gets your brain up, and you're active, and you're out the door, all positive, ready to hit the day, and then it can really drop dramatically for some people. It might not even get up there anymore after a while.
Yeah.
Now you just always feel like crap.
Yeah.
So you can see these variations during the day. So the cortisol rhythm, the cortisol to DHA balance, and just total cortisol production could be a great assessment for hormones. Now, by the way, the sex hormones are made out of the DHEA for the most part. And so now you go a little bit deeper into estrogen and progesterone balance. Now, I don't know a woman that doesn't understand that one. that they need to be in balance at certain times of the month. But even once you're postmenopausal, they still need to be in balance. You need to have them. They need to be at decent levels. Usually the more youthful levels, the better. And for men, it's mostly testosterone, but they all play a part. So we absolutely 100% always look at the hormone balance, and steroid hormone balance. Really critical stuff. So we'll run that, whether it's saliva or dried urine or urine or in the blood even. It's not our favorite test. It depends on what your remedy will be. So physicians like blood because they're going to write a prescription for what's missing, and we don't prefer that. We try to get, what are the stressors? And then how could we naturally rebuild? And augmentation's okay, but it wouldn't be unless they're really suffering, wouldn't be, because relief care is okay. It's not always our first step. So there's the hormones. We test the immune system. You don't want it overactive or underactive. It's a big part of the gut function. So we look at digestion, we look at detoxification and liver congestion, and on and on. So there's 5 labs and some questionnaires that we use with every person.
Yeah, no, I love that. And actually, just to go back, because it's funny, we were in the business for so long, and we sometimes forget, like HPA, for people who are wondering, sitting there scratching notes, wondering what the heck is this HPA thing? And so what Reed is referring to is we used to always kind of focus on the adrenal glands because they are the ones that are pushing out this cortisol. But what we're really talking about is the adrenals are only taking marching orders from somewhere else. And it's the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenals. And sometimes we'll even bring an HPT thyroid into the mix, because the adrenals and the thyroid, imagine them kind of walking around arm in arm. And if one of them is on its knees, then the other one's got to drag it along, kind of thing. So I just wanted to back up a little bit, just to kind of revisit that concept for people so that they understand that, this idea of adrenal fatigue really being this, and it's like you've been saying all along, it's complex, not complicated, in that it's this intricate sort of relationship between the order takers and the order givers. And sometimes they switch roles depending on what's out of balance, right? So
yes, indeed. And also the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal relationship.
Exactly.
So you've got the HP gonad, which is ovaries in women, testes in men. You got the HP thyroid. You've got the HP adrenal, and there's other HP axes. But those ones are pretty much way up there in terms of how a person feels on a daily basis. If you're tired, fatigued, and overweight, and foggy thinking, and maybe bad skin, and all these things, low libido, and hate working out. Actually, I hate working out.
But you do it anyway.
You kind of gotta, but you get the point, that you just don't feel right. You're not right. And if you go to your physician and he says your blood work looks normal, then, and it's not, guess what? It's not. There's other labs. There's these sort of alternative functional labs that we use. Look at. And they give us the healing. We're not there to diagnose and treat a specific thing. That's for physicians that are licensed to do so. And they're looking for bad things. They're looking for brain tumors or, growths, and this and that. And that's a good thing to go get ruled out. But once it's ruled out and it's kind of like come back when it's really bad.
Yeah, when it's broken. Yeah,
then we don't want to wait till it's broken. So we work at what's called the subclinical level. And it means you got symptoms and there's a reason for them.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, I wanted to ask you a question on the testosterone front, because I mean, there's 2 things. One is we know testosterone is important for women also, but are you seeing from your practitioners this kind of epidemic of young men coming in with low testosterone? And what I'm seeing is a lot of younger guys just jump right into TRT. They're like, oh, my testosterone's low, I need to supplement testosterone, which of course is a bit of a double-edged sword, because once you start giving it doesn't work for all things, but certainly with testosterone, you start giving the body testosterone from the outside, it's going to be like, cool, I don't have to make it. I'm good.
Yeah,
Because of that negative feedback loop. But so how are you guiding your practitioners in terms of managing that? Because I feel like there's this increasing mindset of TRT at all costs. And yet, again, to your point, there's so many other things you could be looking at that may change that can rebalance and get the body back to where it needs to be.
Yeah, this is where you want to spend some time looking at the causal factors. But it's such an easy remedy, because there's physicians out there that are just ready to write the prescription for the symptoms. If your symptoms are you're not building muscle and you have low libido and these kind of energy and these kind of things, it's a quick fix. But in the long term, it could shut down normal HP gonadal activity, especially around the luteinizing hormone and the follicle stimulating hormone. Yep. Women know about those because they regulate the cycle, but men, it regulates sperm and testosterone, so it's just as critical in men. And what we want to do is go upstream, see where the negative influences are. I call those the contributors to metabolic chaos.
Yeah.
And we find that the environment is absolutely horrible and it's feminizing. So today's chemical toxic world, full of plastics, a lot of these things we call xenoestrogens, they're feminizing. And so young men who aren't, well, there's some genetic potentials and things like that. But there's a lot of it going around. And I don't know if I call it an epidemic or endemic to the environment we live in. But we're seeing a ton of it.
Yeah.
A ton of it. So you get people to live clean and get on the right diet for their metabolic type, get good sleep, because that's really good for the hormone balancing and detoxing your body, and lots of exercise. You can't be healthy. The sitting, which we're both doing right now. I'm
waiting for my standing desk. It's on the way.
Yes. Well, I'm in a condo down in Mexico, so I don't have my stand-up desk, but go outside and do some fun stuff. Because sitting is the new smoking, is what I was going to say. And then there's stress reduction, and there's so much. People aren't sleeping, and then they lack sleep, and you're not detoxing your body, you're not reprocessing thoughts the way you should. Your whole life quality can go down with stress, different types, the chemical, the environmental, injuries, which would be if I had to say, what's your main stress? The aches and pains that I have from a well-used body, just so many sports, a couple motorcycle accidents, and things, skiing and surfing and football were my things. And it takes its toll. So aches and pains and all that. You gotta deal with that stuff. Stem cells and PRP and that, everything except surgery.
Yeah, peptides are good in that. Peptides have definitely made an impact in that world as well.
Well, then we are going to see a physician. So that means that we're actually balancing both worlds. They should be totally integrative and complementary to each other. And because pain sucks. Yeah,
pain does suck. And to your point, it becomes a chronic stressor, which has the same effect as any other chronic stress.
That's really important, that your body doesn't know the difference between your boss yelling at you. Yeah. And that's why it's good to be the boss, by the way.
Yeah, but you know what? Bosses have stressors too. Don't kid yourself.
Just kidding.
It comes from all sides. You know that. You're the boss.
It's good to be the boss, but man, you take it the other ways, So but you have all these stressors, and last but not least is the supplements. Like I take quite a bit of supplements because food isn't very good. The quality's way down. You eat organic, but it doesn't have that much more nutrition in it. You eat organic to avoid herbicides and pesticides. So that spells, by the way, the dress for health success, DRESS. Diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. Nice. I don't have my own company, but I know a lot about them, and they're very useful.
Yeah. Well, and I think the interesting, we do see a lot of people, I think, that say, I don't want to take supplements. I want to get everything I need from my food. And, there's 2 points to that. Number one, to your point, food is no longer as rich in nutrients as it may have been in the past. And the other point is that, we're not looking to follow the natural curve that Mother Nature set out for us anymore. Right?
Yeah,
our expectations, our generation's expectation is that we're going to keep kicking ass in our 50s and our 60s and our 70s and our 80s and even beyond. Right? Well, if we're going to do that, that's not the way the program was written. And so therefore, there's a point where supplements come into play as we age, and practices and lifestyle and all the things. But we're going to have to use supplements to kind of offset that natural decline and make sure that we just stay here as opposed to follow that natural curve down. And I think that's important. And when you bring up stem cells and PRP and exosomes and peptides, like that toolkit is growing and growing and growing as the further we go. And so, we're going to have to resort to unnatural, if you want to call them that, means. Because we want different things.
Well, also affordability is part of it. It's kind of elite, to be getting some of these things. They're just the common. They're not covered by insurance. There's a lot of regular wage earners aren't going to be able to afford stem cells, but they are natural. They take them. Mine they took out of my hip bone.
Yep.
Both sides. They just went in there and it didn't feel good, but got those stem cells out of the bone marrow area and they spin them. Then they stick them in your neck. I've had both shoulders, my left knee, my mid back, my low back, my neck 2 or 3 times. I had injuries, and it's the most direct way to bring the healing of the body. So it's natural healing.
Yeah.
Some of the other things, peptides, they're known to have a very few side effects, but some. And anyway, so we do the DRESS program because it, in a sense, is how you got in trouble in the first place. Not eating right, not sleeping right, not exercising enough, too much stress. Don't take supplements, and you don't believe in them, and you can run down. I wanted to go back for 1 sec to what you said about the natural decline. I studied anti-aging early on when I first got in the wellness business. I read a book by Roy Wolford. He was the dietitian for the both biosphere experiments. And so he was with I think UCLA, and he wrote a book called The 120-Year Diet. 120-year diet, Roy Wolford, and it was really, really informative about calories and nutrition and aging. And he said that the human body was actually, scientifically, you could go about 120 years before you just died. There's no way to get
wear out.
Hey, no matter what you do, because they experimented with animals. And they couldn't get them to live no matter what. They made mice. Mice die in a year. Rats, big white rats, they live 2 years and that's it. They'll die within a month of each other, these litters. And he had rats living 5 years.
Wow.
And that's amazing. And so he really, really knew his stuff. And he goes, humans, if you did all of that for humans, you could get to 120. Not sure. Most people say, who wants to? But food matters. So you should be able to this was going to be my point. Once you get to 40, instead of going up 40 and then 45, 50, and then they call you over the hill.
To dip. Yeah.
50. Yeah. You really should be up to about 40 and stay that way till you're 80. Just stay at the 40 threshold and I'm close to 70 years old. And I feel, and I've tested out with telomere to be about 40, 41.
Good for you.
I think it's mostly genetic in my case, because I was a bad boy when I was younger. But I've overcome much of it.
I think genetics is maybe 10% of it. I think, you may have done you may have pushed your body, let's say, pretty hard when you were younger, but you've also been living a very different life over, let's say, the last 20 years at least, right?
Yeah.
And we know, the cool thing about the body is it can restore, regenerate, and repair. Not 100%, but it can. So, one thing I like to tell people is, whatever your age you're at right now, it's never too late. Like, it's never too late. How far you'll be able to dial back the clock, that may, to some degree, have something to do with how late it is and how bad, how much damage you've done over the years. But I think that to some degree, we can always improve things no matter where we're at. But the other point I wanted to touch on actually was, the dress protocol that you keep talking about, and talking about things like stem cells and exosomes and even peptides. I think a big piece of dress that makes it so powerful is that what it does is it addresses the terrain, right? It establishes a degree of balance, or homeostasis would be the fancy word for it. But, getting rid of that excess inflammation, bringing things into some semblance of order and balance, if you will, so that the stem cells and the exosomes and all the fancy stuff can really do its trick. Because I'm sure you would agree that, you do stem cell injections in someone's knee who's very inflamed and sick and overweight and just hasn't been taking care of themselves. Those are the people very often that you hear, oh yeah, stem cell, I got stem cells, they didn't work. Well, they couldn't.
Exactly.
Burn them off, man. You put them into a burning house. It's.
I'm so glad you said that. That's really important. Yeah. Yeah. Once you get all the baselines in place, the diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation, the dress program, we call it a holistic grounding program, even for those with medical conditions. So you can have it, and there are serious medical conditions, and you need to be watched over by someone who understands how far south that can turn and how quickly. And so we're the junior partner in that kind of a care situation.
Nice.
And until you're out of the woods, now we're your main partner. We're gonna work on that lifestyle stuff. If you lift yourself into it, if it's a chronic, degenerative, chronic stress related, downward spiraling thing, you can very often pull yourself out of it. We say, as long as you're still fogging the mirror, you're a prospect.
I love that. That's a good expression. I like that. Okay. So there's a couple of other things I wanted to ask you. So would you say that you've had to make any major changes to the program since you first started it? In terms of the conditions. Yeah.
Yeah. Some has never changed and never will.
Yeah.
The principles of the laws of nature aren't going to change.
No.
And that's what we work with. We work with this innate intelligence that's in every cell, tissue, organ, system. You don't have to teach a cell what its job is.
No.
It knows, you don't have to teach the moon to keep circling around the earth and the earth around the sun. That stuff is an intelligence beyond our scope, but it's working in our bodies for us. So that will never change, the fact that the body heals itself. But man, the labs and the knowledge and even the supplements, as you mentioned, the progress has been amazing. And labs come and go. Labs are businesses. They could go out of business. They could have a great lab, and we've seen them. Man, there's a couple labs I wish we could get our hands on. And recently, I just got one lab I missed for a decade. I got a new lab out of Canada to actually start running for us again. So we're looking always for the latest and greatest. You can't stay up to date on everything, but yeah, it's changed. It's also changed because it's really popular. I mean, when I started teaching in 2008, my first class had 19 people in it. And we now have thousands of practitioners in 50 countries. And it was just a weekend workshop.
Yeah.
Now it's a 10-month certification program with practical exercises and exams and certification and all these cool things you get to do once you're a certified FDN. You work under our medical director program. You can use labs all over the country in different countries. And
yeah,
that's the deal mostly with the lab and the graduate. But still, yeah, it's changed. And, it came from, I'll just say, interviewing. I interviewed the first 2,000 graduates personally. The first 2,000 people that go through my program. I said, how'd you like it? Where'd you come from? What made you want to do the FDN program? And what could I do to make it better?
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And they spoke up. They said, well, Reed, it'd be good if you did this, do that. And then, if you beat me hard enough, long enough, I'll probably do what you ask,
Well, it's a brave question to ask, but it's a smart question to ask, right? Because asking people who've just been through the program, they're the ones who just stepped out of the fire. So at the end of the day, you just want a better mousetrap. Like you just want a more efficient program that's going to make it easier for people to be proficient at what you're teaching them so they can help more people. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I wanted to agree. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I actually delivered the product, we're not in the business to just recruit students. We're in the business of graduating students. That's what I deliver it's like get you to the end, get you to graduate. You take all your exams and things, your quizzes, and there's oral exam and stuff to prove to yourself that you actually got what you bought.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me is I delivered what I'm selling, I finished. We have an 83% graduation rate.
That's impressive.
That's pretty high in the business.
That is high. And of your graduates, what do you know what percentage actually practice? Because one thing I do see a lot of in a lot of different programs is people will graduate and then it's one thing to graduate and it's quite another thing to build a business or to build a practice. And
yeah, I have the stats on that and they might not sound impressive, but when you consider that we will sort of take on all walks of life. So some people only sign up to work on themselves.
Yeah.
They know that going through our program is going to change their life, their personal health. And everyone has a story and everyone has a reason they came to FDN, and almost all of them, it includes some personal health challenge. So some people are just happy that they at least got healthy.
Yeah.
And that's enough. They don't really want to be in business or go work for a doctor or any of these things that our graduates could do. So out of the first 3,000, which is when I quit keeping track, 1,000 took it for their own edification. So they're not out there practicing it. Another 1,000, I would say they practice it as a hobby. It's an avocation. It's like they help their mom and their co-workers or something, but they don't really, they have a job. They don't want to be in business. But I have also, out of the first three, have 1,000 health entrepreneurs, and they're doing this for a living. And they are just the happiest, most dedicated type of people. So, and we have a business acceleration program too. So there's a business model that we teach with it. And it's fee for service. It's one of the purest forms of fee for service.
Mm-hmm.
You can hire one of my graduates and in an arm's length transaction, they'll tell you exactly what they're going to deliver. You can choose it if you want to. There are some rigors. It's not a big wide path to do whatever the hell you want and take these supplements. It's nothing like that. It's a narrow path for some people. And the longer you've been sick or the more complex your situation is, the longer you might be on that the narrow it might be for a while. And the longer you might be on that narrow path, but people are happy doing it.
Yeah.
They're getting better and they're amazed.
Yeah. Well, that's all that really matters, right? Okay. Last question. What would
trick
you
question?
No, not a trick question. We talked about it.
I get so many trick questions.
No trick. I don't feel that anybody wins on trick questions. Neither the host, nor the guest, nor the audience. So.
Thank you.
No, but I am curious. I mean, look, it's now, what's the date? We're February 28th, 2022. We most likely have come through. We don't know for sure that we're through it, but we've come through a couple of very challenging years. Have you had to make, in terms of, this COVID-19 kind of mess that we've all been in for the last couple of years, and particularly with long haulers?
Yes.
Have you had to, have you had to add something to the program, or how are you helping your practitioners to deal with that? Because this is something that's really we haven't. I mean, it's funny. I would say we've never seen before, and yet I have read that other types of viruses do create situations where people suffer for a very long time, but just not in the numbers that we're seeing right now.
It hasn't been around long enough to really answer that completely, but I'll tell you, heck yes. I have to say two things about the pandemic. One is that most FDN practitioners, when everyone else was being sent home, we said, we're already at home,
yeah, exactly.
We work from home.
It hasn't changed our business. Yeah.
Yeah. So just the same way we're doing business now, we're talking to each other, Natalie, and it's the same way. And there was more clients at home, more potential. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to sound like a capitalist pig or anything, but it was very good for us to be now people are seeking us out. Mm-hmm. Because there was no medical treatment being offered. It was mostly just vax or not, and you know what I'm trying to say about that. So what can I do to reduce my risk for any disease, including the C19 thing? I call it the crazy. So yeah, people wanted to get healthier. What can I do myself? And that takes me all the way back to over 20 years ago, control of your own health. Yeah. What goes in your body and how you feel and your state of health depends on you, what you're willing to do. So more people started paying attention. They're at home. We're at home working. It really was, I don't want to say good for business, but a lot of us have really grown a lot because people are looking more closely. Now on the long haulers thing, absolutely. One of the most common things we're seeing now is the chronic fatigue and the brain fog and the lack of energy. And of course that leads to the weight gain thing. So we're not a weight loss program, but we're seeing an awful lot of people who've been home, mental, emotional problems. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you don't want to just take a pill for that. You got to get control. And the more productive you are in doing things for your own health, the happier you are. Yeah. Morale, whether it's a personal thing or it's a team thing or a family, the more productive you are, the happier you are. Yeah. So, and that's really critical to health. Yeah. So I'd say, we've changed some things. Listen, when I started, everyone had fibromyalgia. You don't hear about fibromyalgia much anymore because these other things kind of
it's Lyme, EBV, mold, and
SIBO. Yeah.
SIBO.
Yeah.
But that's what I meant. Like, have you seen those trends kind of come and go? Like, do you think it's just a diagnostic thing that they're being diagnosed in a certain way, or do you think that that things have changed and there is more Lyme around or EBV or that kind of?
People are just becoming more aware of it. My opinion, my observation has been that these things have always been around, but also testing has gotten better.
Right. So we're able to hone in
like
on
the mycotoxin testing, these things so far, they didn't even exist that I know of 22 years ago. Right. So the technology has helped a lot. But the crazy is real. I mean, I got it. I tested positive. I was sick for 3 days. I mean, just kind of flu like with a bit of a headache, which I never get. But I came out smelling like a rose, and now I have my natural antibodies. And
no, that's
so it's a real thing. It's a real thing, not to be underestimated.
No, but are you finding, like, have you guys, and I'm sure like this fits within the DRESS model and the whole metabolic chaos model, where with COVID long haul, you're able to apply those principles. Like, are you finding that there's a common theme running in there? Is it the energy production systems in the body? Is it the immune system that just never really
a lot of
kicks
oxidative
out?
stress. We're coming up with a new test next month. The lab I'm working with in Canada for new oxidative stress, mitochondrial damage markers, things like that. Yeah. So it's a combination of. I mean, viruses aren't good. They contribute to metabolic chaos. A lot of us have been living with them for our whole lives or decades, the EBV you mentioned and these kind of things. There's others. So this is a new one that was threw a real curveball at everybody, but I see maybe you just sort of hope in a couple of years we'll have our arms around this. We'll see what the long-term effects of that and vaccines are and these kind of things. And it all contributes to metabolic chaos in the body. And our job is we're not physicians. I can't diagnose anyone with anything. I can look at a test result and say it's positive for COVID, but it's not my place to diagnose. It's just, that's one more thing adding to chaos. We still are looking for the mold and the Lyme, but more ubiquitous would just be the chemicals in the environment.
Yeah.
Heavy metals and things. And there's tests for all these things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love it. All right, sir. Well, I think we've been on a nice little journey here. Would you maybe like to tell people? So, we could have two different audiences today. I mean, because the show gets listened to by a lot of different people. So maybe you could tell people where they can be directed. Let's say if they're looking for an FDN practitioner, and then secondly,
Sure.
What if they themselves wanted to become an FDN practitioner?
Yeah, we have a website. It's Functional Diagnostic Nutrition.com. I couldn't think of a longer name, but Functional Diagnostic Nutrition.com / the name of your podcast.
Well, fortunately, you didn't use the
Superhuman.
whole. Yeah, you didn't use the whole name of my podcast, because that would have been like the alphabet between the two of us. So
Yeah, Biohacking Superhuman Performance Podcast.
Yes.
So, but if you go to functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com / superhuman, we have a chat. We have people, we're fully sort of prepared to answer questions anytime. If it was just your personal health, they would direct you in the right direction. If it's considering becoming an FDN practitioner, it would direct you into the right place.
Amazing. I love it. Well, Reed, this has been great. I think I really enjoyed this talk. It's I think this is the longest we've spoken. Finally, we've got to have a real conversation.
Yeah. I don't. Okay. Well, we're going to see each other out there. We're going to really be positive, and the world's opening back up. And we get to sit down for a cup of coffee or tea or something like that, and have some more chats.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.